if our future should depend that we will get an ultimate which from above will decide for us, and then the question is, of course, again, who is going to recognize this ultimate, and which will be the rules for recognizing this ultimate. You have really an infinite regress here. But anyhow, I would be utterly pessimistic. If that is the case, then we are lost. Because this actually demands that a new God will appear. This world, which was a Christian world in the Christian Middle Ages, had this ultimate instance because it was God. And because this had disappeared, Western humanity was back in the situation in which it had been before it was saved or salvaged or whatever by the good news. And you know as well as I do that there were no ultimates with which one could validly and with validity appeal to. One couldn't appeal to anybody. One could, and if you go through such a situation, the first thing you know is the following: you never know how somebody will act. You have the surprise of your life. And this goes throughout all layers of society, and it goes throughout all various distinction between men. And you could see that those who, if you want to make a generalization, then you could see that those who were still very firmly convinced of the so-called old values, they were the first to be ready to change their old values for a new set of values, provided that they were given one. And I'm afraid of this. I do not believe that we can stabilize a situation in which we have been since the 17th century in any final way. John Stuart Mill said man has one inclination, that is to command, and one disinclination, that's to obey. And I would say that man has at least a third inclination, namely to obey. And that is by no means a disinclination. And this is much stronger in human psychology than these people think it is, you know. Most people basically want to obey, and I said one more step. I said those who want to obey usually also want to command. You know, that usually goes together. If you want to read the classical passage on this, please read Herodotus, the third book, chapter 80 following. That is the first a discussion of the forms of government. And there you hear finally one man who does not want to become king because he says, I don't want to rule and I don't want to be ruled. I'm afraid that wherever you have this dialectical continuity in which nothing new can happen except, that everywhere there you have violence as a kind of marginal phenomenon of power, but still it's the same as power. See, the left says, by which I mean all Hegelians, whether they are left or right. The left says violence is a marginal phenomenon of power. Power is behind it. But it is the same. It's one of the modes, but a marginal mode. The right says what is behind all power is violence. Let's face facts. Let's be realists. All power ultimately is violence. The assumption is the same. As far as my problem goes, it doesn't matter, because that is their power becomes, so to speak, a marginal phenomenon. When you read treatises about power, you always will hear one thing, that power must grow. If it doesn't grow, it rots, it decays, it rots away, you know. Against this stands the great discovery of Montesquieu, that power can check power, and both powers that check each other can remain intact. You know, that is that you can limit power without destroying it, which of course is one of the chief problems of all political science. It's frequently said that revolutions are made by revolutionary. Nothing could be farther off the historical truth. A revolution occurs when the power structure falls down. And the power structure falls down when these people who have got to execute order do no longer obey. And what keeps the two people, the one who gives the command and the one who obeys, together in a structure of authority is that they both believe in the legitimacy of the authority. And I assure you, for your own well-being as an individual, it's very unpleasant to live under a dictatorship or a tyranny or a one-party dictatorship, but it is paradise compared to living under a totalitarian dictatorship. As things stand today, when we see how the superpowers are bogged down under the monstrous weight of their own bigness, it looks as though the new example will have a chance to rise, if at all, in a small country or a small, well-defined sector in the mass societies of the large powers. For the disintegration processes, which have become so manifest in recent years, have crept into everything designed to serve mass society. All public service are afflicted with it. Schools and police, mail and transportation, traffic on the highways and in the big cities. Bigness itself is afflicted with vulnerability. And while no one can say with any assurance where and when the breaking point will be reached, we can observe, almost to the point of measuring it, how strength and resiliency are insidiously seeping from our institutions drop by drop, as it were. And the same is true, I think, for the various party systems, all of which were supposed to serve the political needs of modern mass societies in order to make representative government possible where direct democracy would not do, because, as John Selden said, the room will not hold all. Again, we do not know where this development will lead us, but we can see how cracks in the power structure of all but the small countries are opening and widening. And we know, or should know, that every decrease of power is an open invitation to violence, if only because those who hold power and feel it slipping from their hands have always found it difficult to resist the temptation to substitute violence for it.